Thank you very much for inviting me here this afternoon to speak to you. As you can see, my title there, The Links of Sports Fields, 17th Century Sport and Culture in the Murray Firth region. Okay, so the links along the Murray Firth have been sports fields for men, women and children for over 400 years. Historians, however, have neglected Scotland's early modern sport history. Instead, they focus on the development of organized and professionalized sport from the 19th century onward. This paper begins to address this disparity, and it argues that during the 17th century, sport operated on two levels in the Murray Firth. Intellectually, sport was directly associated with the elite notions of education and civility, preparing young men for adulthood. In practice, lawful sports were encouraged amongst and widely practiced by the ordinary Scot. I'm going to demonstrate this by dividing my paper into three sections. First, talking about the Murray Firth, setting the geographic kind of backdrop for my research. Then I will look at the elite notions of education, sport, and civility. And then finally, I'll explore sport from a more everyday kind of focus. The Murray Firth. The Murray Firth is a large triangular indent to the north of Scotland, with its vertices at Wick, Bewley, and Fraserburgh. My definition is a little bit different than a few other people's definitions of the Murray Firth. I'm focusing on the main boroughs around the Firth, as opposed to the points, the geographic regions, kind of the extremes of the region. The shortest side is between Wick in the north and Fraserburgh in the east. By sea, these points are the closest. However, by land, they're the farthest away, especially when considering the bridges over the Bewley, Cromarty, and Dornoch Firths weren't finished until the later part of the 20th century. The North Sea, then, in centuries past, should be seen as a highway in the Murray Firth, not a barrier, binding the region together, not separating it. The coastline of the Murray Firth is largely a fertile strip of land enclosed on one side by the Highland Hills and on the other by the sea. The width of this coastal band, however, is not continuous. For example, as the hills encroach the sea as they do near Hensdale, which my parents and I found out yesterday, this fertile strip diminishes. Conversely, on the outer edges of the Firth, in Caithness and east of Murray, are considered the traditional lowlands. Isaac Forsyth of Elgin commented on the similarities of the landscape in this region. He said, "The lowlands of Murray may be conceived as a long extended valley bound upon the Frith on the north and the winding range of mountains along the south side, which bears a striking uniformity to the mountains on the other side of the Frith. The conical hill of Cullen landing against the Morven, called the Path of Caithness, the valley opened by the Spey answering to that of the river of Helmsdale, with other elevations and depressions corresponding." The links, or the coastal grasslands, are familiar landscape features throughout this region. They were, and still are in many cases, common lands used for the grazing of livestock, a source of turf for construction, and a site of recreation. The word links has become synonymous with golf because of the historic ties binding the sport and the landscape. Historians, however, have rarely examined sport in these natural arenas, especially north of Aberdeen, nor have they examined Scottish sport prior to 1850, with few exceptions such as John Burnet, David Hamilton, and Olive Geddes. When examining the Murray Firth through the Highland-Lowland binary lens, much of the complexity is not captured. Ewan Cameron, Alison Cathcart, and Alan Kennedy concur that this region is a cultural grayscale, which is neither totally Highland nor Lowland in character. The noble families then, from Bewley to Wick, such as the Sutherland, or the Sinclairs of Caithness, the Gordons of Sutherland, the Rosses of Balnagown, and the Urquharts of Cromarty, as well as the Frasers of Lovat, can be seen as penetrating this often distinguished Highland region with lowland lordly culture. David Matthews' novel approach in 1955 to separate the gentry of the northern earldoms from that of the western Highlands and Islands exemplifies this distinguishing factor. Kennedy extends this analysis further by arguing that the gentry in this region were not clans in the pure sense. but were lowland-style families whose territories happened to lie in the highlands. Indeed, the gentry on the southern coast of the Murray Firth too exhibited this lordly culture. However, this is more to be expected and follows mainstream historiography, separating the Highland chiefs from the lowland lords. It will be subsequently shown that a number of these lowland-style families created programs to facilitate and spread civility with an aim of extirpating barbarity from their lands.